Hasan has been detained while traveling. I got stopped by CBP at Global Entry for additional questioning. I'm out. It wasn't that bad. Very strange experience overall, though. Now, a lot of people have been sharing their opinions about what could have occurred. Hasan gives a little bit more information, but I'm just going to read this article right here. Left-wing pundit Hasan Piker says U.S. border agents grilled him on Trump in Gaza. U.S.-born progressive streamer says officials at Chicago airport led him to private room on return from France. Hasan Piker, a U.S.-born progressive political commentator, said he was stopped by U.S. Customs and Border Protection agents and questioned about his opinions of Donald Trump and Israeli war policy as he returned to the country on Sunday from France. Very interesting. Very interesting. Piker, recounting the incident on his Twitch livestream on Monday, said he was led to a private room at Chicago O'Hare Airport and interviewed for nearly 2 hours about his political views. I guess I don't really need to watch the livestream since it's going to be laid out right here. The goal here is to put fear into people's hearts, to have chilling effect on speech that, like the government, is unafraid of intimidating you, Piker said. Does this stop me from saying whatever the fuck I want to say? Of course not. Don't be ridiculous. But the reason why I wanted to talk about it was to give you more insight into what the government is doing and to speak out. I think Hasan is probably being a little bit dishonest here. He's probably being a little bit, he's kind of fear-mongering, I want to say, if that's the correct way to say it. He's like exaggerating like what these people actually do. Feel free to correct me. The left-wing streamer has built a mass following on YouTube and Twitch. I don't care. I think they did it because they know who the fuck I am and they wanted to put the fear of God into me. This is nothing but lying for likes, Trisha McLaughlin, a spokesperson for the Department of Homeland Security, said in a statement. Claims that his political beliefs trigger the inspection are baseless. Our officers are following the law, not agendas. So, back to this. Did this stop me from saying whatever the fuck I want? This is obviously like, Hasan is just being dishonest here, trying to like make it seem as if he's a victim of a silence attempt, right? But realistically, I believe, or so I've heard, and correct me if I'm wrong, I've heard that like plenty of journalists, plenty of like international journalists that are pretty vocal about certain certain conflicts, also get questioned as a part of security questioning, part of safety questioning. I don't like, and since Hasan is a pretty like notable figure in his own right, it's not out of the realm it's not out of the realm of reality. It's not strange for him to be detained and asked about something that he's been pretty vocal on. Especially given like all of the what's it called? Especially given all of the negative PR that he's accumulated in the past 2 years. She added, upon entering the country, this individual is referred for further inspection, a routine, lawful process that occurs daily and can apply for any traveler. Once his inspection was complete, he was promptly released. So yeah, Hasan is just, trying to he's just trying to like sympathy bait. He's trying to fearmonger, trying to make it seem as if like the United States is like encroaching on his on his like on his First Amendment, right to free speech. Piker repeatedly described the exchange as cordial, but said, assuming the officer was familiar with his online commentary, Piker said he was candid about his views, telling the agent he was not fond of the U.S. president. Okay? He said the officer was particularly focused on his criticism of Israel's prosecution of the Gaza war, asking him, do you like Hamas? Like, do you support Hamas? Do you think Hamas is a resistance group? In response, Piker said he told the officer that he was a pacifist and wanted the endless bloodshed to end. I just keep repeating that over and over again, he said, describing the line of questioning as insane and a violation of his First Amendment rights. No, like, of course, if you're going to be pro-Hamas, which is internationally considered a terrorist group by so many organizations, right? Of course, they're going to question you to make sure that you're not actually a terrorist, talking head, a terrorist, funded talking head, or even a terrorist in your own right. And given your own statements on the internet, of course, you're going to get some line of questioning like this. It's not particularly insane. They just want to make sure that you're not, colluding with terrorists. Piker said this was his first attempt to return to the U.S. using the Global Entry program, which normally expedites travel. He was returning to the U.S. to speak on Monday at the University of Chicago Institute of Politics. Piker said neither his phone nor laptop were searched. He said the interview ended shortly after he asked whether he was being detained, if he was free to go. Yeah, so he's playing this up to be a lot more egregious than what it actually is. It just seems like something that normally happens. Asking him a question, making sure that he's safe for entry, something that that probably happens with so many public figures, making sure that they're not potentially they're not potentially a danger to Homeland Security, right? They're not a security threat. It's not out of the realm of possibility that they were just making sure that Hasan wasn't this bad operator. To be clear, that's probably just to make sure that he wasn't a bad operator, and I guess they have some sort of reasonable suspicion to at least ask him a handful of questions. Which, to be clear, I'm pretty sure they do to just about any very vocal, prominent journalist or political figure. Chip Gibbons, the policy director of Defending Rights and Dissent, said in a statement, "We are deeply disturbed that CBP is stopping political commentators at the border to interrogate them about First Amendment protected activities, such as an abuse of power. Such an abuse of power is an affront to press freedom." Well, they just talked to him. They didn't arrest him. They just questioned him. How's this an abuse of power? I'd probably also be equally as disturbed that somebody is being detained, but he wasn't fucking arrested. Like, he wasn't like silenced. That could be seen as intimidation. You know what? You make a really good point, Ellie. You make a really good point. You make a really, really good point. I was about to say the exact same thing, but I was just like thinking my words carefully. I'm glad that you said it first. Yeah, you could say that this could have been an intimidation tactic, but without like, you know, definites. And seeing how like they say that this is a routine, like, you know, interaction, and I've seen other people online say that this happens all the time as well. Is it really an intimidation tactic? I mean, probably. If I were to be charitable to Hasan, I think that it was probably a little bit inappropriate for these individuals to intimidate him over his beliefs. But even then, he's already made his beliefs and his statements like pretty clear on stream. And if these people are aware of Hasan, wouldn't they already have enough, like, you know, information to get him if they really wanted him to? How is that going to stop him from saying anything equally as abrasive any time in the future? Am I right to say that? Am I right to say that? I would like somebody to correct me if I'm wrong. I'm saying that because I genuinely want to, like, you know, other perspectives on this. DHS flagging and attending one of the U.S. largest left-wing voices for their political opinions, while the Trump admin suggests they might suspend habeas corpus, does not portend well for the future. Interesting. You know what? I think this is fair. I think this is fair. It definitely does. It definitely does feel inappropriate, I'd say. I could definitely see how this could be an intimidation tactic, and I think that you know, Hasan shouldn't be like, you know, being escorted into private rooms and then questioned about his beliefs, unless these people have like more than enough reasonable suspicion to believe that he is actually aligned with like terrorists, for example. And given like the many cases recently of people being arrested for their protesting, I guess there is something here to be somewhat aware of. There's something here to be careful about, to be clear. I want to be like fair to Hasan, right? He's obviously like overstepping. He's obviously like overplaying just how bad this is. But I don't believe that there is nothing here. I think that there might be like some sort of commentary, some sort of like, you know, criticism, some sort of conversation that you can have about censorship and attempts to, you know, or pseudo attempts to like try to get people to quiet down. You can say that they're getting a little bit more drastic, a little bit more, you know, more heated, a little bit bigger, a little bit larger, right? For lack of better words. There is something that you can say here in regards to all of that. But anyways, so this is going to be commentary review. And I want to start with beloved creator that Achido loves getting news from, right? We're going to start with beloved creator, Achido's main source of news, Asmongold.
Yeah, Crash Out, it's Asmongold's fault I got detained. What is this? So is Hasan blaming me that he got detained at the airport? Yeah, guys, I made the call.
And I was shocked. We're unironically brought up in that conversation. The Houthi. Like, did you...
That's right. Yes, that's right. Saying that you support a designated terrorist organization got you extra questioning whenever you were re-entering the country.
Oh, you want to see a Houthi musical? Sure.
I mean, I would say that this is like, you know, I would say that this would give these individuals like reasonable suspicion to you know, question you about who you support, who you agree with.
See, I know they're singing, but I'm seeing just guns and shit. This isn't a music video, Hasan.
We think the Houthis, Ansar Allah, is doing what Luffy would do. I have no problem with the Houthis. Yeah, because I don't. What do you mean?
Yeah, okay, there it is.
If you think I'm a terrorism supporter for that reason, then yeah, I'm a fucking terrorism supporter. These dumbass slop tubers are actually playing with fire. And I even thought...
Really? Playing with fire? Okay.
What about not even mentioning this? Because I was like, I don't want to give him any...
Okay, so that's the first lie here. Does anybody actually believe that he actually thought of not mentioning this?
He actually instantly tweeted about it, and since then, reposted it dozens of times.
The reality of the matter is, 100%, the Trump administration...
I mean... He actually got him there.
Yesterday when Hasan wasn't in the country, he was in France or whatever. I was like, Donald, all right, we've got our chance. He's going to be coming back in a day or so. So just, yeah.
Dipshits are playing a formative role in getting people in trouble with the law.
Yes, that's the point. We don't want people supporting terrorism, promoting terrorism on the platform. That's the whole point. Yes.
That is literally the case.
And also, by the way, keep in mind, nothing happened to him. He didn't get fined. He was allowed re-entry into the country. He was inconvenienced for a period of time. And yeah, that's what happens when you say that you support.
I mean, you could see this as a form of intimidation. Was it though? Not sure. It's hard to say.
Support the actions of a terrorist organization, and then you play their propaganda, you end up getting detained for extra questioning, re-entering the country, making sure that we're not letting people that are actual terrorists, because Hasan is not an actual terrorist. He just...
Okay, you know what? As much as I dislike Asmongold, he was actually pretty fair here.
likes cosplaying as a person who likes...
Could he have been a little bit more nuanced? Yes, but that's not really something that people expect from Asmongold. But I'm actually quite decently surprised that he was like as fair as he is. I think I may have like overreacted a little bit here. I think I may have overreacted a little bit here. But say what you will about Asmongold, he was actually pretty fair here. So I give Asmongold's opinion on Hasan. In this case, in this short clip, who knows what he actually said on stream, right? To be very, very clear, I give it a 7 out of 10. And now, I want to watch the Pegasus video. Because you guys know, here at Gamma Nation, I am not a fan of fucking idiotic, uncritical thinking YouTubers like Pegasus. Uploaded 3 hours ago. I want to see exactly what Pegasus is saying. I want to see if he gives any decent pushback, any decent criticism, if he thinks about this in a way that is actually impartial, in a way that's nuanced. I want to see how good this guy's commentary has evolved since the Mr. Beast allegations.
Piker has just been detained by the US government. He is actually terrified now of being arrested and put in prison. And he seems to think that it's because of our slop drama videos on YouTube calling him out. And he seems to think that slop tubers are somehow in cahoots with the US government. Now, if you didn't know, I live in Southeast Asia and I'm not Americanized.
I mean, obviously Hasan is being like inflammatory, right? He's trying to make it seem as if like everybody's out to get him so that he can reinforce the support that he gets. It pisses me off how nobody, like, you know, fails to consider this aspect. You can actually criticize Hasan for being purposefully inflammatory instead of treating him as a fucking moron. Hasan knows what he's doing, right? Treating people like Hasan as morons and underestimating them is actually quite dangerous if you want to criticize somebody. Which is why I dislike people like Pegasus. They're not doing like their due diligence. They're not actually like, you know, thinking about things like this in a fashion that is actually strong criticism against somebody. It's, oh my god, he actually seems to think that YouTubers are working against him. No, he doesn't actually believe that. He knows how to play his cards. He knows how to get people riled up and come to his support.
So, yeah, that argument just doesn't work. But I'm happy to take credit for the arrest.
Obviously, that's not what Hasan meant. And obviously, like, that's not what is like, you know, what his goal with that statement was in the first place. Right? Like Hasan, he might be a moron outwardly, but at least, you know, where it matters. Or he might appear to be a moron outwardly, but where it matters, Hasan is actually a pretty clever individual.
Of Hasan. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we have wonderful news today. It seems like the mainstream...
We have wonderful news today? It's wonderful news for somebody who's like, you know, who has a voice on the internet, despite whether you agree with them or not. It's wonderful news for them to be detained for being vocal about something.
Catching on to the fact that Hasan openly supports terrorists and plays their propaganda on stream.
I mean, yes, you can always criticize Hasan for being a quote-unquote terrorist supporter, right? And for promoting, like, you know, and for putting out propaganda, which is a criticism that I'd give too. But even then, there are nuances to like the level of support that Hasan actually has. If like for example, terrorists tomorrow were to like suddenly start, you know, doing like, you know, targeting somebody indiscriminately and also committing genocides, he would equally be against them too.
And that's kind of against the law. You can't just be shilling for terrorists out here. So we're just gonna look at Hasan's crash out on stream, blaming SlopTuber, saying that he's going to get arrested. He also calls himself a journalist and says that he would love to talk to more terrorist groups. We'll also look at Asmongold's response to the situation. Apparently Hasan's also going around telling people to neck themselves as well, so we gotta check that out. And he's also hosted a talk at the University of Chicago.
Oh wow, I can't wait for this fucking moron's uneducated opinions about Hasan.
Immediately brings up Ethan from H3H3 and Asmongold in his talk. So this drama is like directly transferring to real life consequences, and maybe by episode 50 of the Hasan saga, he will officially be locked up. But let's kick this off with this tweet. Hasan claims he was stopped at global entry for additional questioning when returning back to America. I got stopped at CBP at global entry for additional questioning. I'm out, it wasn't that bad. Very strange experience overall though. CBP, if you didn't know, is US Customs and Border Protection. Basically, they're people who protect Americans from terrorists, right? Yes, they didn't ask for my phone and definitely asked a lot more about my political affiliations. They definitely knew who you were then. The guy who said America deserved 9/11 and praises terrorist organizations was stopped by CBP? No way!
Dude. This is what I fucking hate about Pegasus. He does no critical thinking of his own. He just lets his fucking opinions be controlled by, like, you know, obviously, dude, don't get me wrong. It's obviously, like, for content. He does it for content. He doesn't because, you know, appealing to the wide majority's opinions, right, is the easiest way to get views. It's the easiest way to get money. But it's so irritating. It's so irritating. And I know I'm doing it to myself. I'm just making myself a rate. But at the end of the day, calling it out is content. Technically, terrorist organizations can be tried for genocide. Whatever, man. I am not that educated on these issues.
They asked me about...
But I do know how to point out people's, you know, inconsistencies and failures as speaking bodies on the internet.
You already. Trump, Israel, Houthis, Hamas, even Twitch bans. And then we got a picture of him, and I swear he aged like 50 years. So naturally, after being questioned by the US government, Hasan blames it on SlopTubers and says it's happening because of us.
The fact that a lot of the shit that, like, the Ethan Kleins of the world have, like, cried about over and over again were unironically brought up in that fucking conversation. And I was shocked. I was shocked.
Okay, so Pegasus' criticism is that Hasan brings up Asmongold and Ethan Klein in the first couple of minutes of his conversation, right? Well, if he's... I mean, that would make sense if it was just Hasan being, like, straight up vindictive and petty against Ethan Klein and Asmongold. But no, he's just recounting his experiences being interrogated, saying that he was equally shocked that would be the first thing that came out of their mouths. These people are so uncritical, dude. It pisses me off.
Okay, not like the bleach sword, obviously, but like the Houthi. Like, did you interview a Houthi? It's he's not. You can look to all of the reporting that came out afterwards and before I interviewed him. The very fact that that was like a point of contention that could have fucking gotten me arrested is insane. And I genuinely, in that moment, was thinking, like, these fucking dumbass slop tubers are actually playing with fucking fire.
Hey, that's me. Everybody say hi to Hasan here. He's actually the #1 Pegasus fan. Bro's actually glued to the series. I'm glad I could contribute to your downfall, actually. This is wonderful.
These people have nothing in their fucking brains but Hasan bad, and I'm glad that I can contribute to your downfall, not even taking into consideration that there's actually very big issues here, and somebody's like, you know, okay, say what you want about Hasan. Call him a terrorist sympathizer all you want. And it's probably a true statement to make, at least, you know, loosely, right? At the very least, loosely. And to a bigger extent, it probably is, like, a legitimate true statement to make. But there are some serious implications here about people's, like, First Amendment rights and freedom of speech being infringed upon, which you should actually be incredibly concerned about, right? At the end of the day, even if Hasan does say all of these inflammatory, aggressive things, that is not actually indicative of Hasan being, like, a very terrible or evil person, right? Who know, like for all we know, he has a very naive point of view where he thinks the ends justify the means, where a terrorist organization such as the Houthis, who are currently, you know, fighting against Israel, for all he knows, he thinks, oh my God, these people are anti-Israel. That must be good because Israel is currently committing a genocide. He might have a very naive like you know outlook on this stuff and may not actually actually support all of these horrible things that these organizations do. But you're fucking slathering all of this mud and like this wide ass fucking net on this person's thoughts without taking into consideration like the very real issues of people being silenced over having like naive thoughts.
News. I just love how this moron thinks that the US government is sitting around watching slop videos on YouTube. Bro actually thought he could yap about supporting terrorists all day on Twitch as the biggest leftist political streamer and not get questioned by—
Again, the naive, like again, you could always use like the naive argument where he might yap all day long about supporting terrorists, but that alone is a very leading statement, right? Who's to say that Hasan actually supports and endorses every single thing that a terrorist does, right? Because when you actually take Hasan's views and look at them critically, he only supports those that align with his views of anti-genocide, of being against genocide. He doesn't actually align with every single thing that has to do with committing atrocities. So this is like a very loaded statement.
border protection. And wow, now—
But I can agree that when you say so much inflammatory bullshit, eventually, you know, the walls are going to come crashing down on you, and you're probably going to like get some sort of repercussions for the inflammation that you're causing. Does that make it just? Well, it depends. If these people actually have like a reasonable suspicion or reason to believe that he might be like, you know, a legitimate terrorist or terrorist supporter or terrorist adjacent, then I can understand that, right? But there's obvious like, you know, there's obviously like the very possible concern that his First Amendment rights might actually be being infringed upon.
He's trying to gaslight the US government, be like, that wasn't a Houthi terrorist, guys. It was just Luffy from One Piece. Haven't you watched the anime? Then he says,
wow, dude, where have I heard that one before? Where have I heard that one before? Oh my god, I haven't heard that one before.
That he didn't want to talk about this, but he had to because slop tubers are apparently ruining his life now.
And
the agency that took him aside said it was a routine check and he's just exaggerating for likes. I already said that.
I even thought about not even mentioning this because I was like, I don't want to give him any sort of like power over the situation. But like, the reality of the matter is 100% the Trump administration is inadvertently working with a lot of these fucking dipshits. These dipshits are playing a formative role in getting people in trouble with the law.
100%, guys. Basically, this guy is accusing me of working with Donald Trump. You can't actually be serious.
No, he's not accusing you of, okay. He's not accusing you of working with Donald Trump. He's saying that when so many people go around spreading this unnuanced rhetoric of Hasan being a genuine terrorist sympathizer, terrorist supporter that believes in their terrorist acts, then eventually that's going to get into the ears of these fucking officials, and they're going to start believing it too, because they're not going to go out of their way to like do research until they can actually like interrogate the guy.
Bro, yes, me as a non-American living in Southeast Asia, never even been to America actually, is apparently in cahoots with the US government. Hasan really stepping up his schizophrenic tendencies here. Riddle me this, how does drama YouTubers sitting and yapping in their room, calling you out for the shit you say, you know, the shit you put out publicly, is somehow some conspiracy working for Trump? Here's a thought.
It's not a conspiracy, and that's not what he's saying. It's not a conspiracy, that's not what he's saying. When you make videos on people like Hasan that get millions upon millions of views, hundreds of thousands of views, right? Hundreds of thousands of views, which we can, I guess, call millions when you add them all up, right? H3H3 situation, which loosely involves Hasan, right? H3H3 also being a cultural giant in his own right that also gets hundreds of thousands of views. When you make videos making hundreds of thousands of views, eventually the rhetoric that you fucking spew in these videos is going to reach authorities, and they're going to go loosely like, oh my god, this guy might actually be a genuine terrorist. He's not saying that you're directly working with these, like, you know, with the government. He's saying that this, like, you know, uncritical analysis of Hasan has become so prominent that it has reached authorities, and now he's being questioned and quote unquote intimidated for his, you know, for his for his vocal opinions or for his opinions.
Maybe you actually broke the law. Maybe you're not allowed to stream terrorist propaganda and invite Houthis on your stream and run defense for them and support terrorist organizations like Hamas. And maybe you being the biggest leftist streamer, somebody reported you to Border Patrol.
That is literally...
You know, that's actually a fair point. Hasan is also, you know, Hasan is also an incredibly large, you know, cultural giant in his own right. So eventually, his own words might rub even some of his own audience the wrong way. And somebody could be like, yeah, you know what? This is a fair point. This is a fair point.
The case. It was shocking that that was the case, but it is the case. And it's actually very frustrating that it is the case, that this administration doesn't care. That's why they work with Beitar. That's why they work with all these other fucking insane groups. The Barry Weisses of the world actually have motion in this goddamn admin.
Classic Hamas Diddy Piker blaming everybody but himself. You literally got yourself in trouble with the law. I'm not the one who played a terrorist propaganda music video on stream. That was you. That was all you.
I mean, yeah, fair.
You gotta blame it on the slop tubers, who are absolutely winning right now, by the way. King of the slop here just hit 600k subs. Thank you guys, by the way. By the way, slop tuber was like a name given to discredit people who literally just work hard and make consistent content and cover.
Literally work hard, make consistent content, and just cover stuff uncritically. No brain power, no IQ. Wow, way to look at me, guys. They're using slop tuber as a slur against me. They're using slop tuber as a slur against hardworking YouTubers that make fair coverage daily and work hard and upload daily, as if you didn't platform, you know, false allegations in 12 different Mr. Beast videos. Great job. Moron.
For drama, I guess, but it's kind of backfired so bad now. I kind of wear it as a badge of honor because, you know, the success is insane, the views are insane, we're absolutely killing it, and I embrace all the memes. You know, the "It's Over" saga is a legendary meme. I guess so many
because you platform misinformation.
comments.
I'm glad that you led hundreds of thousands of people, millions of people potentially, to believe that Mr. Beast was responsible for harboring a pedophile that sent CP and a bunch of other misinformation.
Saying, you
Great
know,
stuff. Great stuff.
you're doing God's work here, exposing these absolute freaks. And I appreciate that a lot, okay? My job is simply keeping people entertained and informed. Then
Keeping people entertained and informed. Yeah, with terrible fucking analysis. With uncritical, idiotic, useless analysis.
Hasan talks about how he was questioned about Hamas.
Really interesting was in the actionable side of things, they also...
Actually, I think being called a retard is epic and cool. Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
asked, have you ever interviewed a member of Hamas? Have you ever had a communication or correspondence with a member of Hamas, Hezbollah, or the Houthis? Now, what's really fucking insane about that is that as someone who works in media, sometimes I do actually do journalism, right? As I've maintained this position over and over again. And I said that I would, if given the opportunity, talk to someone that is a part of the Ansar Allah movement, a Houthi, or even Hamas, or even Hezbollah, right? I think that I have the right to do so. And what was interesting, you don't do journalism, you grift. I know, Chatter. That's why the fucking...
Owned by Epic One Guy. Let's fucking go.
Federal government is trying to arrest me. Yes, because I'm grifting too hard. That's what...
Unironically, that might actually be the case. Unironically, that might actually be the case. He's grifting too hard, so now he's being detained because he's grifting too hard.
It is. Thank you. Yes, you're fucking dumbass slop.
He won. That Chatter won.
Tuber is correct. I'm grifting.
Bro, this is absolute gold. He is so mad at slop tubers. Thank you, Chatter.
No, dude, he's not mad at slop tubers. He's mad that he's being investigated for being a terrorist supporter. Right? There's terrorist supporter, the way that we understand it on YouTube, right? Which is that this guy platformed terrorist propaganda and was like, "Oh, look at this Houthi guy. He's just like you and me, guys. Let me attempt to humanize this guy." In my naive way of thinking, not realizing that there might actually be real problems with these individuals, right? But terrorist supporter for everybody else who happens to who may be a normie and hear these allegations is going to be like, oh my god, this guy supports terrorists that are fucking raping and killing white people in Europe.
Was that like a Pegasus fan? What an absolute legend. Right, by the way, he is global rank #1 grifter. If you want to learn the art of grifting, you gotta study Hasan.
Do you know what grifting means? Does Pegasus know what grifting means? I'm pretty sure Hasan isn't pretending to, like, behave the way that he does. I'm pretty sure Hasan isn't pretending to do any of this stuff. Okay? Grifting is to deceive somebody into giving you support. At least, let's use the word loosely here.
On here, he probably wrote a book on it. Hasan is like the human equivalent of a typo. He's just a fucking sorry mistake of a person. And I love the bro.
You can't be saying that. You can't be saying that while making a dude. You can't be saying that while probably being like significantly less informed. Like, don't get me wrong, Hasan again can be an idiot in his own right, but you can't be saying that while being significantly more uninformed.
I'm actually a journalist.
Hasan bad. Look at this cringe thing that he said. Like, again, I hate to be the one to defend Hasan because I don't like Hasan because of my own biases, right? Like I like to consider myself like, you know, like an edgy non-soy, non-lefty idiot. But Hasan isn't wrong all the time. He's not wrong all the time. Okay? I may not align with like his, you know, his far left attempt to, like, you know, promote his politics, but he's not wrong all the time. I think it's possible that Hasan is pretending, but I don't know how you'd prove it. I mean, everything is a possibility. Me stepping outside and getting struck by lightning in a clear day is a possibility.
Let me make it very clear. You are not a journalist. You're a pathetic hack terrorist sympathizer and a racist piece of shit.
You know what's funny is that Pegasus says this, yet he talks about keeping people informed. You cannot make fucking, like, you cannot make half of that insult without doing a little bit of introspection. Okay? Yeah, coming from Pegasus, that's completely fucking idiotic.
And of course, Hasan would love...
Is he a racist? Probably, probably not. Who knows, right? Very difficult. You could say something like insane, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're actually racist. Is Hasan actually a racist? More than likely not. Is he a hack? Yeah, somewhat. Can he call himself a journalist? If he goes out of his way to do, like, you know, actual methodical research and present vetted information, then he is doing a level of journalism, okay?
To talk to Hamas directly and Hezbollah and the Houthis and pretty much every...
Are you not allowed to talk to people to, like, understand where they're coming from more, even if you disagree with them? Are you not allowed to, like, explore how the world functions and where these people's like point of views come from? Are you not allowed to, like, do information gathering? Are you not allowed to find out more about these people and then come to your conclusions on whether or not you actually support their atrocities? Is that a bad thing to do?
Every other terrorist organization. Hasan would love to put on an extra pair of white undies that day just to soak up the discharge after talking to his terrorist idols. Future Pegasus here, we actually have an update. NBC News reported on Hasan's alleged detention. DHS disputed his version of events. Nothing but lying for likes. Okay, so Hasan tweets out, the DHS response is so funny because they're not even disputing that it happened. They're omitting the insane questions that were asked and instead claiming that I wasn't targeted for my political beliefs. Why y'all ask me about Trump, Israel, Houthis, and Hamas in my Twitch bans? Well, for the 69th time, you support terrorists, dude. That is a cautioning. Here's what the article said. When asked for comment about Piker, a Department of Homeland Security official called his account nothing but lying for likes. Claims that his political beliefs triggered the inspection are baseless. Once his inspection was complete, he was promptly released. My guess is some of the employees probably recognized you for your views online and decided, hey, maybe let me ask this guy a couple questions. It wasn't for your political views or anything like that. It was more like, is this guy actually backing up what he says or is he just yapping from his room, right? What part of a lawful routine inspection requires the...
Yeah, I was about to say, getting stopped is a thing. It is a thing, to be fair. I agree. But There is also the possibility, which I'm not claiming is a definite, by the way, because it would be incredibly dangerous to do. It is also the possibility that these people genuinely had, reason to believe that Hasan was a terrorist supporter or terrorist adjacent. Given like all of the media and negative PR that Hasan is like sort of brought onto himself.
As to question me about my political views, my opinions on Donald Trump, or my stance on Israel and Palestine. He said in a statement to NBC News, the agent was cordial, but the experience, along with reports of other Americans facing similar questioning, seems intended to create a chilling effect on speech. Of course, this is a free speech issue, Hasan. Totally.
I mean, it's funny because people like Pegasus will look at this and be like, oh my god, these people are not infringing on your speech, they're just doing something. And some people would definitely argue that this is an attempt to like limit this person's vocalization of his beliefs.
As a taxpayer, you mean paying tax to the U.S. government, which funds Israel, which sends missiles to Gaza? Interesting. And didn't you say you should stand up for your beliefs? And you told Gila, Ethan's wife, to refuse military service and go to prison for that. So why don't you refuse paying taxes, son? Just curious.
Okay, you know what? Got him. You know what? Got him. You know what got him?
I believe CBP agents should be focused on actual threats like preventing agricultural risks or combating trafficking, not interrogating people about their political beliefs. Bro, it's not that deep. They're just checking if you're a terrorist or not, because when somebody screams, America deserved 9/11, it's kind of hard to differentiate from a terrorist, you know? I believe that he got stopped. He's threatened multiple politicians and supported terrorist organizations. It would only make sense that he's on a list.
You know what? That actually makes a lot of sense. This is actually somewhat reasonable.
Yeah, I keep forgetting the fact that this guy literally threatened to kill a U.S. senator. So, my bad, guys. It's kind of hard to remember the list of bad shit this guy's actually done. Now we gotta move on to Asmongold's response to all this drama.
Yeah, Crash Out, it's Asmongold's fault I got detained. What is this? So is Hasan blaming me that he got detained at the airport? Yeah, guys, I made the call.
And I was shocked. We're unironically brought up in that f***ing conversation. The Houthi. Like, did you...
That's right. Yes, that's right. Saying that you...
Yeah, he did not threaten to kill. He did not threaten to kill, but, you could definitely interpret it that way.
Got stopped by CBP for additional questioning. They asked me about my job. They knew already. Trump, Israel, Houthis, Hamas, even Twitch bans out now. I wonder why this happened, guys. Beyond shocked. I don't know if you guys could see my face right now, but jaw is literally on the floor. I can't imagine why they would be questioning him over these very specific topics. If anything, I blame the slop tubers for this. What is going on, guys? Welcome back to a brand new video. Thank you so much for coming back, and appreciate the love. I feel it. I feel it through the screen. This is one of the funniest things to happen. Twitch streamer of all time, Hasan Piker, was recently abroad and coming back to America. As you guys saw from that intro, he was asked quite a few things. I don't know, he's never said anything controversial ever to warrant this type of behavior. The guy is just a nice, wholesome YouTuber and Twitch streamer. He has never had terrorists on his show. He has never promoted terrorism. Truly don't know why they would ask him these kind of questions. And how do you think Hasan responded to this? A, took the blame like a man, or B, blamed other people for this? If you answer B, you would be correct.
A lot of the shit that like the Ethan Kleins of the world have like cried about over and over again were unironically brought up in that fucking conversation. And I was shocked. Okay.
He says a lot of stuff that the Ethan Kleins of the world say about him were brought up in the conversation. Well, like in his mind, he's thinking that this is stuff that is only like, like what's it called? Confined to the internet. In his mind, he's thinking that these are things that are going to be only confined online on the internet. So when stuff like this breaches containment from the internet and it starts like leaking into the real world, and he's like being investigated for it, of course he's going to be at least a little bit perturbed. I mean, who fucking wouldn't be, right? Who wouldn't be?
Not like the bleach sword, obviously, but like the Houthi. Like, did you interview a Houthi? It says here that you interviewed a Houthi, and I was like, or was he actually a Houthi? And I was like, he's not. You can look to all.
Yeah, like when you actually pay attention to what he's saying, right? There's so much like discourse and so much like coverage on the internet. These people are going like, oh, it says here. We read here. We also got intel from this like location. Do you actually support this terrorist organization? Do you actually support their methods? Do you actually want them to like, kill innocent civilians, right? Hasan's probably going to be dumbfounded. He's going to be like, of course not. Of course I don't want that to happen. I just like, right, like as I mentioned earlier with like the whole naive point of view, he's probably like an ends justify the means type of person where he thinks that if a terrorist organization is fighting against Israel, then they probably have some just cause to fight against Israel. He probably doesn't actually support each and every single negative action that they commit, every single atrocity.
All of the reporting that came out after.
He's not really blaming anybody. He's just saying the stuff those people have been talking about, have been mentioned in the interrogation or whatever. Well, yeah. Yeah. I said that earlier, Shelby. I'm not sure if you heard. But like these people cannot rationalize any of this. It's like, oh my God, he's deflecting. He's like passing blame. No, he's not blaming anybody. He's just genuinely shocked that like these idiotic conversations, because don't get me wrong, a lot of political conversations on the internet, and I'm pretty sure Hasan would even agree to this in like a serious conversation, are idiotic, right? Like him in real life and him on the internet are probably two completely different personalities, as is most anybody on the internet, right? He's probably thinking, oh my God, these fucking petty squabbles, these like marketplace of idea debates are actually like leaking into my real life. Jesus fucking Christ. And these morons, like Sensitive Society, fail to understand that.
Afterwards, and before I interviewed him, that he's not a Houthi, that he is a regular Yemeni citizen. And I said, like, his name is Rashid al-Haddad. He is not even a Shia. And the dude, luckily, again, Iraqi, went, oh yeah, that's right. That's a Sunni last name. Al-Haddad is a Sunni last name. So he must not have been a Houthi. And
interesting.
The very fact that that was like a point of contention that could have fucking gotten me arrested is insane. And I genuinely, in that moment,
I mean, he's right. He's right.
Was
right. I obviously, without evidence, like, it is my personal belief, it is my opinion that Yemeni kid is more than likely a Houthi. It is my personal opinion. However, there is not enough definite evidence to make that claim definitively.
like these,
and if there is not any definite evidence to make that claim, definitively, why the fuck should he be held accountable for that?
Fucking dumbass slop tubers.
We're going to hold somebody accountable for somebody that we can't even hold accountable. There's like so many layers of disconnect here.
Are actually playing.
Like yeah, I'm willing to say that he is more than likely a terrorist, right? That he is more than likely a Houthi or something adjacent to that. But it is incredibly undefined whether he is or not.
Fucking fire. And I even thought about not even mentioning this because I was like, I don't want to give him any sort of like power over the situation. But like the reality of the matter is 100%.
But like the thing is, we don't operate off more than likelies. Especially not me. We like people should not be operating on more than likelies. Oh, he's more than likely to have killed that guy. That's not enough to like hold somebody accountable for those actions, because there's always the possibility that it could have been somebody completely different, or the circumstances were completely different. So what these people are doing is that they're like trying to hold, they like in the wider like meta analysis, they're shitting on Hasan because Hasan is being held accountable for somebody who can hardly be held accountable because there's not enough like definite evidence to suggest that he is or isn't.
Trump administration is inadvertently
I mean, he did post ship hijacks on his tweet before he got banned. That's true. But again, it's always the possibility that he might just be some guy that, happened to like have been a part of these raids, or have like, boarded a ship when it was like fucking, what's the word that I'm looking for? Stationed or whatever. And he actually didn't participate in any like terroristic attacks or whatnot. He didn't actually commit like any crimes, right? That's always a possibility. There's so many different possibilities at play here. Okay, so many different things could be possible.
Working with a lot of these fucking dipshits.
I don't like working on maybes, ifs, or potentialities. I need like absolutes.
These dipshits are playing a formative role in getting people in trouble with the law. Okay, that is literally the case. It was shocking that Can
we cancel Rev says Desu next?
Was the
I mean,
case. But
I don't believe in cancellation.
It is
I believe in criticism, not canceling though.
Case. And it's actually very frustrating that it is the case, that this administration doesn't care. That's why they work with Beitar. That's why they work with all these other fucking insane groups. the Barry Weisses of the world actually have motion in this goddamn admin.
It couldn't be all the other interesting stuff he said over the last 5-6 years, right? No, I blame slop tubers, YouTube drama channels.
He's not blaming slop tubers. He's not blaming YouTubers. What he's saying is that there's a lot of like, you know, there's a lot of dissenting opinions that aim to smear Hasan in the worst way possible. And while you can criticize Hasan for saying some very outlandish things and for being a complete fucking moron, that is not the equivalent of him actually being a legitimate terrorist sympathizer or terrorist supporter. I mean, sympathizer would probably be more correct to say here, because to an extent he does sympathize with these individuals, but that doesn't mean that he's actually going to support these horrible actions that terrorists engage in.
Channels and Ethan Klein for me getting in trouble. And Hasan, come on, calm your tits. You're not gonna get.
Is Hasan actually blaming Ethan's and Destiny's audience? I don't think that's the case. I just think he's like generally blaming like people, you know, I think he's blaming people in general who like consume this type of content and like parrot these ideas of Hasan being like an unapologetic terrorist sympathizer, terrorist supporter.
In trouble, okay? You should try that again. Just to confirm, you know what I mean? Just to double check that it's the slop tuber's fault. Dude, when are you gonna take some accountability and be like, yeah, it's on me?
I mean, but the thing is like unironically, it kind of you kind of can attribute at least partial responsibility or partial blame to slop tubers, right? Because they perpetuate this information uncritically to hundreds of thousands of people, millions of people, maybe, like when you combine all of the numbers together.
I couldn't really say these extreme things because when you look at that, when you're the #1 left-leaning.
Actually, no, you're right. I made that same argument earlier. I don't understand how I didn't click. Yeah, it's like, you know, all the people who are propagating all of this is congested between like a handful or you know a very like I want to say specific circle of internet creators, of online creators. I agree.
Political YouTube channel or Twitch streamer for that matter, yeah, you're going to be under a microscope, especially when you're saying very interesting things about America. And I'm not saying America is the perfect country. It's far from perfect. No place is perfect. There's ways that you can criticize America.
Sensitive society is actually not being that dumb here. He's sensitive society is like unironically not being that dumb, because you can like hold Hasan on his own accountable as well for like not really like checking or auditing his own language and saying things that could be interpreted really terribly by again, given the fact that Hasan himself is, as I said earlier, a cultural like, you know, icon. It's entirely possible that some people may be adverse to some of the things that he says and then end up like, you know, holding him accountable for it on their own without other like audiences or other like, you know, connections coming in.
Or Trump, or the Trump administration. There's ways you can do that, but the way Hasan goes about it is a little extreme. Now, once again, this is really not Ethan Klein's fault, let alone the slop tuber's fault. This is his own doing.
Which is not really what he's saying. He's saying that in general, the people that hold similar beliefs or similar ideas to like the slop tube culture aren't going to assume everything that Hasan says in the worst faith possible. Because even though Hasan does say terrible things, if you interpret some of the things he says in good faith, you probably won't be that adverse to him. You probably won't hate him as much as you typically would. Which is ironically, which is funnily enough, it's what I'm doing right now.
Controlling Hasan Piker and be like, you should say this. And when you look at that, actions have consequences. How could we not see that coming? Hasan is acting as if he was a fucking puppet and someone's controlling him. Someone in the universe has their hand up his ass and is making him say all these crazy things. Hasan, you should say this. No, you should do this.
Where did you get this interpretation from? What makes you say that?
My words got me into trouble? Time to blame everyone else but myself. Where's the accountability for someone that's always preaching about holding people accountable? Where's yours? And hey, I'm not here to defend the fucking...
You know, this is actually fair, but these people have a terrible way of framing it. They're not arguing it properly. They're making it seem as if he's blaming everybody else but himself, but what he should be saying is, yes, all of these people may be reporting you in a bad light, but you should probably be careful of the things that you're saying. Like, you should probably be mindful of the things that you're saying that could be misinterpreted.
CBP
It's a fair criticism to make.
officers. Some of them
But these people just absolutely suck at vocalizing it or verbalizing it in a way that actually matters.
have huge egos. They love to go on power trips. They think they're above it, right? I'm not here to defend those people. But when you're saying very questionable stuff about America and saying this to over 30,000 people on the daily, that is bound to get some attention. I'm surprised. He's surprised. Yeah, dude, that's going to raise some red flags. I don't know if that makes any sense. Am I getting my point across? Am I going insane? Am I losing it?
He knew
This is a pre-recorded video. You can literally just write out your thoughts,
exactly who the
which is what I do.
fuck I was, but he was basically like, he always made it seem as though he was asking certain things that covering in the process of that conversation, he would ask additional questions. So he kept saying, what do you do as a job? Do you talk about the news? And I was like, yeah, I talk about the news. And he kept saying, okay, so when you talk about the news, do you talk about the war? And I was like, what do you mean by that? He's like, do you talk about Trump? And that was the first time is this question. Like, I literally straight up told him, I was like, why are you asking me this? I was like, what does this have to do with anything? Yeah, they asked me about my fucking Twitch bans, chat. It's not even a joke.
What does that have to do with anything? Well, they're obviously asking him what it is that he does for a living, so they don't immediately identify him as like, you know, so they don't immediately identify him as like an independent or as like an agent of Hamas, right? So like they're going in their minds, they're probably thinking, okay, so maybe he's doing this to be like a provocateur. Maybe he's doing this to elicit a reaction. Maybe he's doing this to get like his, you know, freedom of speech across, right? To get his like ideas across, utilizing the freedom of speech. That's probably why they're asking him that. It's important to like ask those questions because if you consider yourself a type of journalist that looks into these conflicts and it is your job, then of course you're going to have like some pretty strong opinions on the matter, rather than you just being a straight up like, you know, terrorist supporter.
Asked me about fucking Twitch chat, like Twitch bans. The reason for why they're doing that is, I think, to try to create an environment of fear, to try to get people like myself, or at least like others that would be in my shoes that don't have that same level of security, to shut the fuck up. And for me, I'm going to use the privilege that I have in that moment to try and see what the fuck they're doing.
If that was really the case under the current Trump administration and how they're dealing with things to shut you up, they would have done something more drastic, okay? And I'm not
And now we're getting into conspiratorial bullshit. Okay.
here to condone that, okay? I think that
You know what? He's actually not incredibly wrong. If they really wanted to shut you up, they would have. They probably would have like legitimately arrested you.
that's a little too far.
And like if you really want to get that down the conspiratorial rabbit hole, right, they would have arrested you and then planted like false evidence or some bullshit.
But come on, like, I get it, you're completely playing into it. I don't think that was a way to censor them. And if anything, that's completely against free speech and what Trump fans want, which is being able to say whatever the fuck you want. You know, I'm not here to get into politics. Once again, I'm not an expert, but that would go against their...
Isn't that his point? Isn't that Hasan's point? Isn't that his entire point? That his free speech is like being infringed upon?
The fuck you want. You know, I'm not here to get into politics. Once again, I'm not an expert, but that would go against their whole thing. Freedom of speech and Elon and Trump, and we could say whatever we
Yeah, isn't that Hasan's whole point?
want and have no consequences. For better or for worse, that should be universal for Hasan as well. If Elon and
Or a cohesive presentation of information.
others are allowed to say, you know, whatever they want to say, I'm all for freedom of speech, but that also has consequences. Like, dude, if I go on here and start saying insane stuff, I'm allowed to say it, right? As long as I don't break TOS. But that also counts with
The literal
consequences.
oligarchs would never use an influence for anything bad, surely.
Yeah, I don't know.
You smoke, yeah, dude. Wow, it's almost as if people with power will abuse their power. Novel thought. I never would have thought of that. Fucking
Hasan
dude, these people.
Fucked around and is finding out that his words, they'll reach thousands, if not millions of people on the daily, could backfire. And this is a perfect, and I mean a...
That is literally the only good argument that I've heard from anybody in this situation. That is literally the only decent argument that I've heard from anybody in this situation.
perfect example of that. Once again, especially nowadays with how things are. If the Trump administration really wanted this guy shut down, it would have happened. Well, you kind of dig yourself into this. Stop blaming the drama channels, the commentary guys, the slop tubers, Ethan Klein, your ops, the Reddits. Stop blaming all of these people and take accountability for.
And the thing is, he's not really blaming. He's not really blaming either. He's saying that stuff that he argues online with people like Ethan Klein and Asmongold has now manifested into his real life where it's completely unexpected. That's what he's saying. He's not really like attributing blame to slop tubers. He's just irritated that it has leaked into his real life.